According to a recent Politico report, the United States is currently classifying its allies as either bad allies or good allies. Countries that do not properly respond to US demands are being seen as likely to face retaliation. Today, let's take a closer look at this issue. Let's get started. Politico, referencing 3 European diplomats and a US Department of Defense official, reported that the US has created a list categorizing allies as good or bad. This list includes an overview of member countries' contributions to the alliance, and based on this, the member countries have been classified by grade. It is reported that this list was prepared ahead of NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte's visit to the White House on April 8. This time, the main evaluation criteria for the list reportedly include whether each country gives military support, provides bases, and helps respond to the Hormuz Strait crisis. First, let's examine why the United States quickly created this list. President Trump asked NATO countries for naval support to secure passage through the Strait of Hormuz, which Iran has blocked. He also requested naval support from Korea and Japan, but not all countries responded. President Trump was reportedly very dissatisfied. White House Deputy Press Secretary Anna Kelly said the US has always supported its allies, but those countries have not backed America during its military operations, despite the US deploying thousands of troops to protect them. She also said that President Trump made his thoughts clear about this unfair dynamic, and as he said, the United States will remember this. U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth said that by the end of 2025, countries meeting defense obligations will get special benefits, while others will face consequences. This list of good and bad allies reportedly came from Secretary of War Hegseth's idea. It's still unclear if the United States plans to impose real sanctions based on it. They are increasing pressure on allies and will soon start making distinctions in military deployments and defense cooperation. Reducing US troop deployments, joint exercises, and arms sales could serve as sanctions. Conversely, cooperating countries may see increased troops and expanded security support. Currently, countries such as Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, and Argentina are expected to benefit greatly. Poland and Argentina have consistently shown support for US actions and have been cooperative in military operations. Romania even provided an airport. Meanwhile, Western European countries like Spain, France, and the United Kingdom opposed and strongly criticized the US, urging against war in the Middle East. Some refused the US request for support, while others did provide it. The United Kingdom did eventually open the Diego Garcia Air Base, but it was much later. Currently, the US seems to be pressuring its allies. It is reportedly considering expelling Spain from NATO because Spain refused to provide military support in the US's Middle East war. The Trump administration is reportedly considering ways to punish its allies, such as Spain. Internal Department of Defense emails listed suspending Spain's NATO membership and rethinking US support for UK sovereignty over the Falkland Islands. This move came after reports from European and US officials that the Trump administration had previously drawn up a list distinguishing so-called good allies from bad allies. Of course, there are no specific provisions in the NATO treaty regarding the suspension of membership. However, the more serious concern is that the NATO system itself could be shaken. NATO has been maintained by a single principle of collective defense. This structure, where all member countries respond together if one country is attacked, is a system that operates based on trust. If the United States restricts intelligence sharing or only offers selective diplomatic support, this trust structure will collapse. In modern warfare, information is the most important asset, and the moment a particular country is excluded, that country's defense capability is significantly weakened. If the country is excluded from military training and weapons support is reduced, the country is only a member in name and not truly protected. Worse, these changes can cause a chain reaction. When some countries start to be excluded, other countries may feel anxious that they could be next, and as a result, the willingness to respond together can rapidly weaken. Collective defense relies on everyone being sure they'll act together. Once that certainty is lost, NATO can't function. If this continues, each country may strengthen its own military strategy rather than rely on a US-centered defense system. If that happens, analysis suggests NATO may exist in name only, with its military role greatly weakened. Currently, there is little precedent for direct negative actions against allied countries, which is raising widespread concerns. The key reason the United States has been able to maintain its global hegemony so far is not only its overwhelming military power, but also the network based on the trust and cooperation felt by its allies. However, recent developments are being pointed out as shaking the very foundation of this network. In particular, some countries are even saying that the current attitude of the United States resembles the way China used to tie its neighboring countries into a tributary system and treat them in a hierarchical manner during times of crisis. There is a strong reaction of shock because the United States has started to view its allies not as equal partners, but as subjects to be evaluated based on their level of contribution. The bigger problem is the starting point of this war in the Middle East. The United States started military action without enough coordination with key allies and only sought their support after the situation became complicated. During this process, the messaging was inconsistent. Even though some allies, including the United Kingdom, expressed their willingness to cooperate, President Trump publicly made critical remarks toward the allied countries. He mocked the allies, calling NATO a paper tiger and claiming the United States could do without their help. However, as time passed, the war took an unexpected turn. As concerns like maritime control, stable logistics, and long-term operations grew, it became clear the United States couldn't manage everything alone. The Allies' involvement became necessary again, so the United States asked for support once more. This scene created distrust among several countries, as one nation that said it didn't need help and criticized allies later changed its stance when circumstances shifted. This kind of development is bound to be perceived very sensitively from the perspective of the Allies. Security cooperation relies on long-term trust, but repeated demands, criticisms, and changing standards make policy decisions difficult. In particular, there is analysis that, for European countries, the way the United States applies pressure is actually weakening their willingness to cooperate, as they have to consider their own political burdens and international legal legitimacy. If current trends continue, allied countries may distance themselves from the US-centered order and more quickly pursue independent strategies. There is already internal criticism. Roger Wicker, Republican chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, said it's unhelpful when American leaders use a tone that appears to mock our allies. He stressed the need to recognize the many political, strategic, and moral benefits the US gains from alliances. Then, let's consider the most dangerous scenario here. If the current structure continues, there is a possibility that when a war actually breaks out, the situation where our allies do not take action could become a reality. This is extremely serious. It's a serious problem. Until now, the international order, more precisely the Western world, has been maintained on the belief that if someone is attacked, everyone will respond together. Because of this belief, there was also a deterrent effect on war itself. But if this trust is broken, the situation changes completely. From the perspective of a country under attack, the first question that comes to mind is, who will actually help us? From that moment, the entire defense strategy starts to become unstable. Let me give you an example. If we assume that a country is under military attack in the past, it was taken for granted that allied nations would automatically intervene, but now, there could be more countries that simply watch the situation unfold. That's because we first determine if we have a reason to help that country. This is a major shift in collective defense. Because even a delay of just a few hours or days can completely change the course of a war. What's even more dangerous is that the opposing country is also aware of this change. If a hostile country believes the alliance won't respond, they have a greater incentive to attack. Previously, they faced all of NATO, but now they may believe they only need to confront individual countries. This is deterrence collapsing. The power preventing war vanishes. Another key issue is the initial response gap. The first 72 hours are said to be crucial in war. During this period, the Air Force, Navy, and intelligence must act together. If the alliance hesitates or delays intervention for political reasons, that gap can be fatal. The country under attack will be forced to defend itself, and in this process, the damage can increase exponentially. If this situation repeats, each country will no longer trust the alliance. The result is very simple. Countries will each prepare to fend for themselves, the arms race will speed up, and nuclear armament discussions may emerge. When countries can't trust each other, they must prepare for the worst. The key point is that war erupts not where people are ready, but where cracks form. When cracks in an alliance widen and trust weakens, forces will try to exploit those gaps, a pattern seen throughout history. If this scenario becomes reality, the next war is likely to unfold in a way completely different from the wars we have known. And how can we restore this broken trust?
Go.